In this video, our guest Eytan Wiener, the CEO of GETIDA, shares his story of becoming an Amazon seller, scaling and exiting his Amazon business, and starting the Prosper Show to bring together different Amazon sellers. GETIDA is an Amazon auditing and reimbursement service, and in case you want to reach out to them, find a special offer below in the video description that gives you $400 in free FBA reimbursements. And this video is hosted by LISETT LEES. She works with different Amazon brands. And if you like videos we create, always click the like button below and subscribe to our channel.
Hi, Eytan. I'm really happy to have you here on Orange Klik channel today. And today we will talk about your journey as an Amazon seller and also all about different other things you have done. Right now you have GETIDA's logo behind you. So perhaps just a general overview of your background and what you do in the Amazon space today.
Sure. Try to keep it brief because it's a little lengthy. But I started selling on Amazon in 2010. Before that, I was kind of on digital marketing, SEO, and then I kind of accidentally got into e-commerce. Started selling on Magento and website and on eBay, wireless type of devices and like more niche products with a few partners of mine. And we kind of found Amazon by mistake. It wasn't as popular as it is now. We basically listed lots of the products that we had either exclusives for or really good pricing or strategic relationships, from our web sales on Amazon, and it kind of like went crazy because there's much more obviously customer demand, and it was just like the Wild West then. So we just kept on listing more and more products and more sales. It kind of got us a bit fragmented because we were selling everything. So we started with wireless stuff, and then we got into electronics, and we got into photo, and we grew to almost over 30 million in sales in like 18 months, and that's pretty crazy. I don't think we made that much money, if any, because we didn't really honestly fully know what we were doing. But as you know, even today, it's hard for Amazon sellers to know if they're making money. There's just a lot of data and moving parts. But we definitely learned a lot. All the different models: private label, refurbishing, renewed, arbitrage, you name it, we did it. And then probably like 4 or 5 years ago, we kind of grew up and said, okay, like what's the point? Right? What's the point of being a reseller? What's your business worth? Now obviously there's all these businesses that are selling to aggregators. That was not even a thing, not even close. If you were an Amazon seller, it was like not great, and you were too reliant, and it was bad. And tomorrow you could be gone, and you could get suspended. So it was kind of scary, actually. So my partner actually had this cool idea of creating a brand called Blue Coil. So we had this Blue Coil brand, which was a private label accessory brand, and we bundled it with a lot of the solutions that we had. So for example, we were selling a lot of podcasting mics. It wasn't as big then, obviously now it's very big, but it didn't have, let's say, what you needed with it. So Amazon, does a decent job in suggesting related products, but sometimes going to a store, speaking to a salesperson, it's much more strategic. So we would actually make these products in China and import them under this brand. So now you get a podcasting mic, and it comes with a case and a charger and an adapter and the software, because really some of these prosumer things, you can't really use it out of the box. You need help. And this is great. So, and it wasn't done, illicitly, like the vendor approved of it, right? We would send them the stuff. These are like German manufacturers, like serious companies, and they appreciate it. So it's a better experience for the customer. The vendor liked it. The manufacturer liked it. The customer likes it. And obviously, we had this dedicated page, this dedicated ASIN on Amazon with this bundle. So as that improved and as that worked, we kind of applied that, with thousands and thousands of different bundles of variations for all the different categories that we sold. So we had video, audio, storage, streaming, outdoor, you name it. So most of the sales became these bundle solutions. We still would sell some of the standalone product. And then, as we kind of grew, I missed this part, we also had a bunch of exclusive brands. So that's kind of a current model today. They call it, I guess, Accelerator, where we had, 30, 40 different brands from Europe, from Asia, that we would actually buy and sell the product. So it wasn't this agency model that you have today with the revenue share. We're actually making a margin, but we would do everything for them. We would help with the shipping and the returns and the advertising, and kind of just buy the product because they really needed the money. And it was more of a margin model. So that's kind of what we evolved to. And then we actually sold the company at the end of 2019 to a company called Advantage Solutions, which is a public like consumer product goods CPG retail company that's very heavy in like Walmart and Target and stores and food and product. And they really wanted more of an e-commerce experience or solution. They had some other e-commerce acquisitions in their digital division. So they bought us, and then I worked for them for a year, which was 2020, which was an interesting year. And then I actually wound up at GETIDA, which I'll get to in a moment. Additionally, I also found something called the Prosper Show with a bunch of other folks. It was the first like real Amazon trade show. Now it's actually the biggest one in the world. It was it got postponed from COVID a bit, but it was July in Vegas, almost 2,500 people and 150 vendors. When we started it, it was in Salt Lake City, had about 400 people and maybe 30 vendors that we have to beg to come. And now obviously the Amazon space has grown and the aggregator space has grown. So there's a lot of money and interest in the industry. So we actually sold that show at the end of 2018 to a company called Emerald Expo, which is this big trade show public company. Obviously they saw the need for such a thing as trade shows are kind of becoming old and Amazon's hot. But as I told you before, when we started the show, there were no shows, there was no Orange Click, there was no YouTube channels, there was no communities or after parties, there was nothing. There was some biased shows from some software companies like pitching their stuff. And we said, let's make an event. It took a lot of work and it really wasn't me, I was just part of it. But that grew, and because of that, I got to meet really cool partners in the network like you guys and many others, and that's really invaluable and priceless in many ways. Meeting sellers, meeting aggregators, meeting partners. And I actually met the guys from GETIDA, who I'm working with now at Prosper in 2018. I was like going around meeting with different people. And just to finish the story, I actually used their solution or our solution to do the auditing for my company, Quantum. And it was very, very good. And I've used a bunch of other providers or solutions, and I actually built some in the past, so it's kind of close to me. And they had a very impact on my business and my exit, because every dollar gotten back via auditing, which I'll talk about, especially when you sell your business, is a multiple, right? So these aggregators or acquirers pay you a multiple profit. So every extra dollar you have could be times 4 or 5, 6, right? So that really helped me when I sold. Just reimbursements that GETIDA got from me were almost like 15% of my profit, which is a lot. Meaning I didn't do it, I didn't do the work. They kind of just took action, and I paid them a fee just on success, and that led to a huge impact, which is great. Which is why I really believed in it. And I decided kind of in 2020 when I was working from home, I started to work a little more in the office here because I'm friends with the guys and I'd referred them a lot of business, and I decided to invest to get more involved, and I became the CEO in around March of this year. And that's my 6-minute story.
Yeah, but it's a good story.
Okay, thanks.
And yeah, let's go really to the back of you becoming part of Amazon Marketplace and starting selling products. So if I understood correctly, then your business model was a little bit different than most of the sellers are used to. It wasn't just a regular private label business sourcing single products, let's say from China, and then starting selling them. It was a little bit different. So can you give us a little bit more background? Like how did it work bundling up those different products? Because it was like physical bundling. We didn't have virtual bundles back then.
Correct. So keep in mind in 2015 or so when we started this bundling, even though private label is a huge movement now, I think almost 2/3 of our clients or Amazon sellers are their own brands. Back in the day, reselling and arbitrage and all these things were much bigger. Now they're smaller and they still exist. Obviously, Amazon's making it harder in many ways, which we'll talk about. So, however, we tried the private label model. I think it takes a certain mind and nuance. And keep in mind, in 2015, you didn't have all these tools and Helium 10 and research tools and Alibaba enablement. It was much, much harder. And I've been to China and I've done it and I tried and I failed many times. Key point, I failed many times at many different things because a lot of this is very hard and it's not really what you see just online. It's very difficult and challenging, which we'll talk about. But we made some products. We made a mobile printer. We made one of the first selfie sticks, and it was cool, but it was very difficult. Vendors kind of messing you over and payment issues and shipment issues. And I guess we didn't really have the stomach or the cash to really do it right. And it was also very early. So the bundle is a cool alternative because we already have the brand that really likes us. And now we give them more diversity in their brand. So to answer your question, if it was the case of the podcast, if it was the case of the mic, we would look at reviews and see what people didn't like about it or what they wanted from it or what the vendor wanted to do. It just wasn't their business. And then we would go source something. So to source a pouch or a case or a boom arm for a mic is much less expensive and I guess easier to do. It's still hard, but it's easier to do than to just make a product from scratch with a patent and the factory and a mold and everything like that. So we started by like white labeling some existing products. So we have, let's say, a mic or an adapter, and then we would just put our brand on it. And then we started making a little more as we got some more team and staff and expertise and experience in Asia. We started making it a little more custom, with our own mold or our own graphic. And you start with virtual bundles where like you make different listings and you see what works. And then if you see this works, you could source it and make it on your own. So we could, let's say, source from a US manufacturer and just kind of brand it or make it like vanilla or white label. And then once we say, oh, everyone likes this mount, we'll go source it and from China or other countries and really just do a lot of data and testing to see what sells and what's needed and so on and so forth.
Okay, and in the beginning, how big your team was? Because I imagine negotiating and approaching the companies with existing products takes time, because usually it already takes time to communicate with the manufacturers from China if you want to do private label products. Like, how did you split different tasks and how did you manage everything?
Yeah, so my partner John and myself had been to China a bunch of times, and we kind of just met with some vendors and tried to learn the lingo and the language and how it works. And then again, he really took this big initiative to start this own branding process. I don't know, maybe we had 10, 12 people. We had some people on design. We had different agents and people we were working. Only like in the last 2 or 3 years did we have some Chinese speaking employees that really knew sourcing. The rest we kind of figured out on our own and, made all the mistakes. So I don't know, towards the end we had maybe 20, 30 employees, but it was a pretty lean team up until then. Maybe some contractors, some VAs, and just us trying to figure it out. Again, we relied on some partners or some trading companies. Then we got a little more sophisticated as we traveled more, but it was pretty lean team for the most part.
Okay, and you mentioned you were kind of trying to figure everything out, but you mentioned also like back in 2015, we didn't have so many YouTube channels as we have today or podcasts. I remember 2015, I mainly probably listened AM PM podcast. It was like one of the few ones that really gave like good valuable tips. But at that time, if you only listen one podcast, it's still quite difficult to understand different parts of Amazon because now you have so many different opportunities to learn more. So what were your main like ways to educate your team and yourself as well?
It's a good point. I was saying how now there's so much and then there was nothing, but now that I think about it, there really wasn't. Like you saw people sell, like we saw this bundle model. I saw some other sellers do it in their own way. And you kind of, in a nice way, try to copy or mimic best practice. And you look at ranking and you had this Keepa tool, but like you didn't really have Helium. You didn't have these real tools. So now you watch these courses and I've seen some of these Brandon Young and Tim Jordan, all these courses, like it's like a PhD in Amazon and they teach you everything. Obviously some are tricks and some are hacks and some go and come. We literally were like the cowboys, just Wild West trying to figure it out, as on our own. So you can look at what people are doing. You can look at some of the Chinese sellers are doing, but it's really just trial and error. Hopefully you don't waste too much money. Again, Amazon advertising wasn't really a thing until 2018. Now it's like insanely large. So there's no advertising to promote your brand. It's a totally different landscape. So it's good because there's opportunity, but no shows, no ways to learn. It was very, very difficult. And I think now it's difficult too, because I think there's too much. I think there's too many courses. You guys have a great YouTube channel. I watch it a lot. And it's informative and thorough and professional. A lot of these are like, oh, get rich quick, sell on Amazon, you make $1 million, drive a Lamborghini on Instagram. It's really not like that. They don't talk about the pain and getting suspended and the reality and liability. And I think that's a huge problem. So I think not everyone should do it. And if you're doing it, you got to do it full time. You can't just do it, in your lunch break. It doesn't work like that. Maybe you could make some revenue, but it's not a business. and you have to treat it as a real business. So that I think that's a problem. There's too much, but obviously there's certain. It's also great because you really have the luxury of going on YouTube and really learning how to do it. But the hardest part is really the execution, which not everyone can do.
Yeah, that's really a valid point. So let's now move on to the growing phase of your business and also scaling. So what were some of the difficulties you faced when you wanted to scale your business? And did you increase in the number of products on one marketplace, or did you go to sell these products on different marketplaces?
Yeah, so typical scaling problems, cash flow, lending. Again, that's also different now. There's like all these lending companies and Amazon lending, and banks are kind of opening up to the fact that FBA and Amazon is like a thing. Then it was like impossible to get a line of credit. I had to like beg, borrow, really push, and eventually we got something. But just capital was extremely difficult in a cash-intensive inventory business. Finding good people, now it's also a bit different with remote and pandemic, but just finding people. And we were actually in New York City, so it was kind of expensive rent, but we wanted to be there for the brands and the presence, and it was good. But just finding the right people in a competitive market is always hard. That's really just, honestly, people is the most important thing. So that was always a challenge, finding the right people. How do you find them? How do you keep them? How do you incentivize them? I don't know, cash flow people. Those are the two big ones in scaling. Obviously, the other thing we spoke about is all the changes of Amazon in the market. So there was constantly change in the model and in Amazon's algorithm, and just things always kind of moving. And then regarding your question about other marketplaces, in the beginning, I was very into that. I was like, let's be the first to market, right? Let's be the first one on Buy.com or Rakuten or whatever channel. We actually got very into Europe for a while, and we're doing a lot of revenue there, and it was great. But we didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't understand all the rules and the laws and the shipping and the tax, and it was kind of complicated. So we kind of slowed up. Now it's obviously much more mature. But I was very into being first to market. Let's be the first one to do Seller Fulfilled Prime and the first one to do this program. And I always go to Amazon and meet reps and try to do every beta pilot program. Looking back, I don't know if any of those were successful because they were so beta. But I think that energy or creativity led to success because we always tried to mix it up a bit. I'm sure some were a bit successful, but we spent many hours and dollars trying to really do eBay correctly. And as hard as we tried, maybe it was 4 or 5% of our sales, and that's strictly because their traffic is just 4 or 5% of Amazon. So it's not really worth it. The time you spend, opportunity cost to put in growth on Amazon or another channel will be much bigger. So yes, we sold on Walmart. I was one of the first sellers, and I've been through all these different renditions of it. Now it's actually starting to work for other sellers. But and I encourage sellers to diversify, to Shopify, Facebook, and all these things. But for us, we spent a lot of time and effort on it. And it wasn't always worth it. So I was always into hey, let's go everywhere. And my partners were great, but let's just Amazon US is huge. So it's a little conflict in some ways, but it was usually true that whatever you did was cool, but it really did move the needle.
All right. So thank you very much about this information as well. So as you have now sold your business and we're in the process of deciding to sell your business, then I'm sure you looked back to your whole journey and thought there were a couple of things that you could have done differently. If there were any, then what were those?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of similar to what I mentioned before about challenges. I think access to capital is important. So we had decent access, but once we sold the company and had access to more capital, you could see what the growth is, right? So if we would have raised more money or sold some of the company or took on investors, which we didn't, we were very lean and efficient, almost to a fault, right? Maybe we could have been double the size. With that, we could have made bigger purchases. We could have had more exclusives. So that was something I learned kind of after the fact, almost the hard way. That was one thing I probably would have done differently if I had to go back. And even selling the business, it's a complicated process, who to sell to and how and what. And since I've done that, I've learned a lot about how to change, value and who to propose to and who to work with. And there's the bankers and there's the brokers and the strategics. I learned a lot about M&A. Mergers and acquisitions, a lot about finance. Is really being on top of your numbers and profit, as I mentioned. When I was talking about GETIDA before, most sellers don't know how much money they're making, if any, And it's kind of a rude awakening sometimes, and you really have to be on top of it, especially if you want to sell and create value. It's like really important. And most sellers wake up at the end and they want to sell and their books are not in order, or they don't really understand like what the numbers are. And it's cute to a point, but if you really want to sell or make a lot of money from it, or any, you have to know those things. And thankfully, as opposed to when I was a seller, there's a lot of tools now that exist that really can show you almost perfectly what you're making, assuming you enter the right information.
Okay, very good. Yeah, we will soon go into the services that GETIDA offers to Amazon sellers as well. That helps to be more efficient as an Amazon seller. But before that, I wanted to ask about Prosper Show, because it's really a very famous trade show we know in the Amazon space. So where did you got the idea to create such event, and how was the first one?
So it wasn't my idea. It was this guy named James Thompson, who you may know. So he's amazing. He was actually my Amazon rep in 2011. He was one of the heads of FBA. I was one of the first FBA sellers, and he kind of pioneered the program. So he was pretty high up there, but he kind of held our hand, and he's a great friend of mine until today. It really helped us grow. And then he left Amazon. He was consulting, and then we were at a channel advisor show, and it was interesting. But as I said, it was very like biased in that, like, it's like, hey, here's some content, like use Channel Advisor. Right, here's what Channel Advisor could do for you. Channel Advisor is very cool, right? It's really cool capabilities. It's a big public company, like amazing in many ways. But the show is very like slanted, and it should have been. Like, I get it, it's their show. But there was no other shows. There was no neutral shows. There was no multi-software shows. So me and James and his current partner in Buy Box Experts, his name is Joe Hansen, and someone named Chad Rubin, who used to run Scubana, who recently sold. We were all there, and we're like, hey, let's make a show. That's really how it started. And let's make it so that we just have value in content, and like really good speakers and really good at content. No one's paying to speak, and no one's promoting themselves. It's all about quality, and then people will come, and maybe the money will come. So that's long story short, that's what they did. So we had it in Salt Lake, and we had really cool speakers. The first year was very edgy. We had like different competitors on stage, like telling each other why they're better or worse. It got a little out of hand at one point. But obviously every year we took feedback and pivoted accordingly. And it was just a great energy and a great vibe. And then the next year was almost double, and it kept on doubling every year. The third year we got interest from this acquirer, Emerald, and they co-located in Vegas. So we actually didn't want it in Vegas because Vegas is a little distracting, but we kind of had to do it there because they had all the venues there and whatnot. And they co-located it with ASD, which is this big wholesale show that I'm sure your listeners know about. So a lot of the ASD wholesale show attendees came to Prosper and vice versa. That was the idea, that they could just like bolt it on to different events. So that was, that's how we found it, and that's kind of where it was. And then obviously they took it, even to a further level as it's grown over the last 2 years. We kind of guided them a bit behind the scenes. Really, James was mainly the lead. Like, he was spending a tremendous amount of time on it. We were spending a bit of time on it, but we all had our own other businesses. So we just decided to kind of sell it and, move on. But as I said, it was a really great experience.
Okay, I bet it was, because as you mentioned before, you also met the members of GETIDA there. So yes. Can you, now give us a little bit more in-depth overview now when you have joined them as well, what GETIDA does, and how do you usually help Amazon sellers?
Sure. Yeah, that's another good thing, right? If not for Prosper or me kind of going around, I probably, maybe I would have met them, but turns out they actually live right nearby, and they provided a service that was helpful. So again, as I told you, I had actually come up with a software for reimbursements and analyzing data on my own in-house in 2011. And someone kind of ran with the idea. I wasn't really so into software at the time because I was trying to, I was a seller. I kind of always struggled with, should we do software? Should we, right? But as you see now, a lot of the best software comes from sellers, right? From their own experience and pain, they're able to create a solution and offer it to the market. So this was one. Again, we had a business that was lower margin, and we noticed certain issues with FBA. Things weren't received properly, or this fee was incorrect, or this was damaged, or this return was destroyed. It sounds small, but again, we see here like the discrepancy in Amazon FBA of 1 to 3%, right? That means up to 3% of your sales can be affected by discrepancy. So what GETIDA does is we connect to your store. Right, we're in the Amazon App Store. We're in the Service Provider Network. We're authorized, partners. on the tech side with Amazon, and we pull all of your reports. We have software that's been worked on and built for the last 5 or 6 years that finds these discrepancies. And then we also have a service. So we have a solution team, mostly all ex-Amazon case managers that really know the game and the language and the understanding. And they're the ones that actually file the cases. So we pull the data, we file cases on your behalf, and kind of in the background while you focus on your business. And then we only take a fee on what we recover. So we take a percentage of what we recover. There's no long-term agreement. There's no, setup fee. It's only pay for success. If we get you money back, we take a percentage. If we don't, then we don't take anything. So as I said, I used the service. It really got me back a tremendous amount of money to the bottom line, especially on a low margin business. But for any business, whether you're doing 100 or 100 million in sales, we could provide the service. And again, it's really the solution, the marriage of the software and the service that makes us different and unique. Our success rate is high, and what you also have is a dashboard, so you can log in and see everything that's going on, right? What was reimbursed, what is pending, what is the potential, and finally, sometimes we need some information from the seller. So most of it's automatic, but sometimes we need a document, right? Because Amazon says, "Hey, prove that this was shipped," so we need an invoice, or we need you to upload dimensions. So there's a few things we need from the seller to really maximize it, but honestly, the majority of it just happens in the background. So it's a really great value add. It's kind of a no-brainer, and that's what we're doing here.
Okay, sounds really good. So today you're still connected with Amazon sellers a lot through GETIDA, and I'm sure you have a lot of sellers in your network. So what are a couple of tips you could share for today's sellers to succeed better on Amazon?
Yeah, so we speak to sellers a lot. It's kind of weird that I don't do it anymore, but somewhat relieved in a way. Obviously, what we're speaking about now, just watching your profits, like I said a bunch of times on this call, to understand how much money you're making and your costs, and obviously reimbursements, which is what we help with. Really important. Bunch of other tips. I mean, obviously the whole supply chain in the world is very challenging now. So I would say to be on top of that, but there's really no right way to do it because it's insane. It's very hard. Obviously we see sellers who are always doing certain volume, they just don't have inventory. So, sourcing from other countries, obviously still difficult, but obviously China is even more difficult based on lots of factors. So people are sourcing from India or Vietnam or Mexico or whatever it is, just to mix up your source of products, or even US made products could help if you're a US seller or any seller that wants kind of a better source or a more reliable source. I think that's important. Trying to have a really good shipping provider. So even if there's crazy delays, at least you have visibility and understanding. This is real, chaos going on out there. And I guess the other thing I said along this call is, not to fall for some of these like tricks and get rich quick schemes or shows. There's a really good education and podcasts and series that teach how to do it right, and they'll emphasize hard work and really focusing on it as a business. Not to think that you could just do it on the side. Again, you can, but it's not really significant. And if you think it is, it's just not. And also that there's a lot of failure, there's a lot of mistakes, there's a lot of suspensions, things you don't even think you did wrong. You can get in trouble from Amazon, even if it's not your fault. You have to be ready for that, know how to deal with it, keep your cool. It's easier said than done. Those are some, I guess, themed tips that I have based on my experience.
So Amazon actually is a real business to take care of.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to make it such, you need to spend a lot of time in it, like any field, or going to school to be a doctor or a lawyer. Like it's a real thing, and you can make a lot of money. You can also lose a lot of money. Again, you could do it as a passive income and make some money, but since things change so much, and advertising changes so much, and competition changes so much, if you only spend a little time on it, you're actually hurting yourself because you're not really going to succeed. You'll probably lose money. That's what most people don't talk about. But I see it all the time. Those are not the glamorous videos of people who lost all their money, but it happens, and it's kind of scary, to be honest with you. So I think that's important to tell people that it's okay. You just have to understand that it should be taken seriously. And I wish more people spoke about that, but they don't.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing your story and also giving our viewers some tips or insights to bear in mind when doing Amazon business. So could you let us know what's the best way to learn more about GETIDA and reach out to you if anyone is interested in your services?
Yeah, so you can go to GETIDA.com, GETIDA.com. I think Orange Klik has their own special link with a promotion. I think you get the first $400 in reimbursements for free, which they can share. And if you want to email me, you can reach out to me. It's Eytan, EYTAN, at GETIDA.com. Happy to answer any questions. I like helping sellers and the community. And, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you a lot. And good luck in your business.
Thanks.
I hope Eytan's story will inspire you to scale your Amazon business even more. And in case you want to use GETIDA's services to get your money back from Amazon, find a special offer below the video that gives you $400 in free Amazon FBA reimbursements. And now I would like to recommend you to watch other video where Yoni Mazor, also from GETIDA, explains how to claim Amazon FBA reimbursements and reduce your FBA fees.